Hello, guys, and welcome back once again here to another podcast with Sumit Anand. Today, I am blessed actually to have a young lady who's going to be introducing herself very shortly. So, Rajdeep Soki, who I met very recently, runs a very different kind of business, a very non-traditional business, as I call it. And it was great to catch up with her and just trade some views. And funnily enough, trading is one of the key concepts in her business. So I'm going to take myself out of the picture and I'm going to bring in Rajdeep Soki, who is a Forex trader. So Raj, what is it that you actually do?
Hi, thank you for the lovely introduction. So I'm actually showing a lot of people around the world a skill that can essentially pay them for life. Now, with trading, there's a lot to it, a lot of elements to it. And specifically what I do is Forex trading. So that's foreign exchange and also cryptocurrency.
Mm-hmm.
So showing
Okay.
people around the world what it is, what it's about, and also not only showing them, but putting them in a position where they're able to acquire the skill to then use for themselves.
Okay, so it sounds quite amazing. Now, I'm not too familiar with the whole, concept of forex trading. I understand the very small sort of necessities of it, but I know in the market, especially in a world now where people are becoming more accepting to non-traditional businesses, and I hope you don't mind me calling your business that, but it isn't as simple as trading money for goods, etc. It's a very different, very networking style business, a very sort of online concept, which has taken, I'd say, the globe by a bit of a storm in the last few years. I mean, if you go back about 10 years ago, I don't think many people would have heard of Forex trading or what exactly it is. But one of the things I wanted to clear up was there's a lot of misconceptions with some people about what Forex is and what cryptocurrency is, and there seems to be some negative connotations behind it. What would you say to people who have that sort of negativity towards it? Is it more of an education, Raj, would you say, from your side, or a lack of it from people or towards people? Or is it just a concept which a lot of people don't really understand? It's an element of the unknown behind it.
Absolutely, you're right. I think trading has become one of those buzzwords. A lot of people have heard of it, seen it, but many people actually don't know behind the scenes what it's all about. Now, most people's decision on what Forex trading is about is, I'd probably say, around three things. So, number one, the decision is based on someone else's opinion who has, let's say, a negative connotation on Forex trading. And
Mm,
therefore, they would turn around and say, look, trading's not for me, or shout out crazy words like scam or it doesn't work.
of
Number
course.
two,
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe that people, what they do, they get influenced by a lot of people, and they come in the industry, and I feel they kind of come in with a mentality of, okay, it's going to do me good, I'm going to rely on it solely, I'm going to give my money to someone else to trade for me to make me rich. Now, with that alone, this is where scammers come in play. This is where people kind of get taken advantage of because they don't know what it is they're actually doing. And this is why I believe that it's so important to put yourself in the position to learn the skill and be in full control of your own money. So when people come in the industry, giving people their money, and let's say they lose it or something happens, it's then a concept of actually trading doesn't work. Let's put something negative out there. And
Sure.
you know what, you're right. It's not traditional business. It's something different. And, going back many years, trading's actually been happening right from the start, right from the start. So, back in the day, they would trade in animals or pottery or let's say
Cool.
gold or silver.
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
And I think now that it's sort of grown into an era where we can actually use our smartphone to make income from our phone. And our generation, we're on our mobile phones a lot of the time. So it's
Mm,
about, if we're on our phone so much, why not make a profit from being on your phone?
definitely. I mean, why not? Like you said, if you're going to be engrossed in the thing, um, you know, 12 to 13 hours a day, it's better you try and make some sort of income from it, opposed to sitting on WhatsApp or Instagram all day long. I guess. I guess a lot of people recognize trading's been happening for many years. Sort of going back, etc. But one of the new concepts these days, and a little bit away from what you do, is the recent almost like revolution of women really taking business by the scruff of the neck, and really starting to, almost wash away those kind of stigmas that women brought. That a lot of I guess past generational sort of men probably assumed women were good at running a business or didn't have the capabilities of running a business. And today we see a lot of women actually, even in the top 100 earners around the globe, etc. And it's not just dominated by men anymore. So what would you say has sort of changed mentality wise amongst women over the last, I don't know however many years, but for me, I've noticed it more and more in the last 5 years. Would you say it's just an evolution of age or the era we're living in, or has it just got to a stage where women are just like, enough is enough? Like we've all got the same brain end of the day, or we're all born with the same abilities. Does that make sense? So why is it that women can no longer achieve exactly what men are doing? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that, in the sense that it's always men who's taken over and always at the upfront of everything. And
Yeah.
I think now what's happening is that because more opportunities are open, because we have access to the internet, I can instantly send you a message on WhatsApp and you'd receive it within a second. So
Mm,
because we're living in a time now where we can access a lot of things on the internet, what's happening around the world, women are starting to wake up. And me myself, I'm from a very traditional background. Uh, Dad's the breadwinner, that sort of thing. And I think growing up, it made us realize that actually being a woman, we have so much power, knowledge. We don't have to live a traditional role as expected. That would have happened so many years ago.
yeah, sure.
And I think it is important, just from a role model perspective. And this is why people like Eleanor Cardone or Priyanka Chopra, they're so well respected, because they have gone out and they've done a lot of different things that maybe they weren't expected to do.
Definitely. I mean, it's funny you bring up Priyanka Chopra, actually, because the connotations behind, or the perception that the public had of her before when she was acting in sort of Bollywood and compared to now. And I know recently she launched was it an autobiography, or it might have been a biography? I can't really remember. But it seems to have really raised her stock. And it seems to have changed a lot of perceptions around sort of women. And it's good to see. It really is good to see, because in a world today, from my professional network, I mean, I deal with, I'd say, an equal proportion of men and women. And more often than not, I actually find women quite empowering. And I said this in my last podcast, actually, if I remember, I can't exactly phrase how I put it, but I felt women sort of are more daring with the concept of business. I feel they have absolutely exceptional ideas. And I think sometimes I find with businessmen or men who go into business, they have a very pragmatic thought, a very sort of logical thought. But whereas women, I think, come in with a little bit more emotion and that kind of passion. And I always think, if you could get a man and a woman to work together as business partners, I can see that being an absolute storm of a business, because you would have the passion on one side, and that pragmatic approach on the other side. Not saying that that's how it is in concrete, but I've found that from my experience that that's how the two sort of genders seem to line up well. Have you had the opportunity to sort of work with the opposite sex, etc., in your career?
So what's really interesting is when you say difference, I feel that men are very passionate about doing something, and so are women. So if a man takes over a business, they'd want to see it grow. They'd want to see it go through its course of, building, networking, and then seeing it fulfill at the end to what it is they want it to be. Now, women also have the same vision, but the difference is that the number of women is less. And I do feel that it's important for us women to step up and say, do you know what? We're actually made of more. We actually have the same potential, if not better. Hey, but just kind of just go out there and fulfill whatever it is you need to do, as opposed to just living those normal roles that we are expected to do.
Definitely. And obviously, I think with that comes a very fine line as well, which obviously is respect. And I wanted to quickly just discuss this, because there is obviously what you've just described, which is a very a passionate sort of thought process, etc., behind the empowerment of women rather. But there is obviously that fine line where it can transcribe very easily into sort of an air of arrogance or an air of sort of I'd say even sort of a rebellion of some sort. And I've always found that quite off-putting. You know, there's a few people that I know personally in business, particularly women, who sort of, it's almost like the passion over spills and it gets left behind a little bit, and a part of them comes forward which is not really them, but they feel like they have to put on this kind of facade a little bit. And what would you say? Would you say there's a fine line between confidence and sometimes, I guess, overconfidence, and sometimes even borderline stupidity in how you present yourself?
Yeah, I think confidence plays a massive, massive role. It's really, really important because people buy into you as a person, as opposed to your product, as opposed to your service, your business, whatever it is that you are promoting. So confidence and passion, they come in together. So when it comes to confidence, yes, 100%, it is so important to be confident in what you're doing, have the passion for it. But equally, and I'm talking on women on behalf of women, but emotion plays a massive, massive role. And sometimes I feel like men are better at hiding their feelings, their emotion when it comes to the rough side of business. And I think as a woman, and that's why when women are successful business women, it's they're sort of looked up to by other women who would have liked to be in their position or be able to do something and get out of their, let's say, current situation, or be able to have the confidence to build something. So, what are your thoughts about people that want to build something for themselves? They want to build their own business, they've got ideas stuck in their head, but they just don't know who to turn to or what to do?
Um, I'm going to break that down because there's a lot of sort of sub questions in that question, really. So I think a little bit like you just asked, I think for a lot of people is the element of confusion behind how to get going. And people feel two things. They feel like they have a great idea, but also they feel like they don't know whether they should just go for the idea or whether they should actually take on board a professional who can give them that idea. So they fulfill 50% of their ambition straight away by thinking, I do want to go for this, but it's the remaining 50% where a lot of people fail, in my opinion. So I always say to people, if you've got an idea and you are passionate about the idea, you've got to look at it as not just a jackpot from the beginning. You've got to think, this is my idea. I need to grow this idea. I have this ambition for the idea, and one day I want it to be like this. If you have that, then the answer is hit the ground running. Don't even think about it. You need to hit the ground running. And one of the things with hitting the ground running is keep it as simple as it can be. Literally, if you think you're running, and if you're running, just look straight. Don't look left, don't look right. You need to just look straight. And a lot of people end up, before they've even started to run with the idea, they're looking left, right, between their legs, over their head, over their shoulder. And when you're doing all that, you almost making yourself dizzy, really. You're losing the actual process of what you were trying to achieve. So I find that people overcomplicate things. But if you are passionate about the idea, there is no reason why you can't go out there and achieve it. And I think one of the things which is so important, Raj, is don't focus on the outcome. You've got to focus on the process. Now, if I'm going to run a 10K marathon tomorrow, but I'm thinking about the finish line opposed to how am I actually going to get to the finish line, the likelihood is I'm never going to get to the finish line.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's quite, there's a lot of challenges, isn't there, when you're overthinking things?
Definitely. And I mean, like, how are you going to expect yourself to hit that kind of end line if you've not done anything in the meantime to even step towards it? That makes sense. So those are sort of my opinions on it. What are your thoughts, obviously, regarding people who have ideas and want to hit the ground running with them?
Yeah, I do feel that people stop themselves sometimes. So they have the idea, they're ready to go, they want to build something for themselves, but at the same time, they're fulfilling the negativity side. They're filling their head with why they can't do it. And a lot of it's based on fear of not being accepted, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So it's
It's
just
interesting. It's
having
interesting, isn't it? Because the fear of acceptance, really. I mean, fear of failure, fear of acceptance, the fear of being different or being perceived as being different. I mean, this was a lesson I learned very early in my career. I'd say probably at the age of about 24, 25. Um, I went from a person who was very conscious about the friends I had at that time. I was very conscious about what I wore. I was very conscious about what career I was going to get into. I was very conscious about what people would think of my educational background. And if I look at it now, like what, like 8, 9 years on, I look at it and I think all of that is so irrelevant to where I am now. And I'm not saying that's applicable to everyone's life because it's not. I mean, I can only talk about my experiences, but from someone's experience, you can always pick up, I think, 30 to 40% of good, something that can add value to yourself as a person. And this is why I always think it's such a bad idea to try and model yourself or your business on a particular person. If you look at the greatest business people, mentors out there, they listen to equally successful people as themselves, if not more, on a regular basis because they constantly have that thirst to educate themselves. And they take snippets from each person and they bring it into their own sort of rapport. And before you know it, they're the complete sort of package. Does that make sense? So if you're kind of your role model is very important in life, I think. If your role model is, I don't know, let's say your role model is Cristiano Ronaldo, but you want to have the eating habits that I have, for example, you're never going to end up at that kind of level of fitness or that level of success, really, right? So I think when people say, you've changed your mentality, one of the things people really struggle with, in my opinion, is seeing someone's mentality change. Like they really can't seem to put two and two together as to why has this person just changed for the good. And people will never look down on you if you change for the bad. If tomorrow, I guarantee, Raj, if tomorrow you were to lose, what you're doing, touch wood, that doesn't happen, and all of a sudden, you were no longer part of Forex or whatever, you'd have hundreds of sympathizers behind you, right? Because everybody is there for you when you're no longer part of, that sort of stepping stone to success. But the higher you go up, the less fans you're going to have. And people always say this, right? When the higher you go up the ladder, the more lonely it becomes. And I can tell you from experience, that's hella true because that does happen. The more and more you climb up in success, and without you even knowing, you start thinking, am I doing something wrong as a person? And more often than not, it's not that at all. It's the fact that your mentality has changed to a level where other people are finding it unacceptable to accept. Does that make sense? So people are no longer able to sort of verify with you, are no longer able to, they don't feel like, you can add that kind of value. You've almost stepped out of that kind of little circle when you're creating your own little circle. And that's where friendships fall apart, relationships fall apart, businesses fall apart many a time. But I think it's so important for your own personal growth to constantly keep striving for more, irrelevant of sort of people's opinion. I'm sure you find that yourself.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely agree. And it does happen that the more you progress, you sometimes outgrow the people who you were once surrounded by. So I remember at school, one of the teachers said to me, "You must always have a mentor in anything you do." And I never understood what he meant. And like you're going back to diet or role models, you want to be in a position where you're actually acquiring that knowledge on the how, on the what, on the who, the when. All of these things, they're getting answered by people who have the results of what it is you want to do, where it is you want to be. And when you start to follow these kind of people, they almost become your biggest supporters because they want to see you and help you grow. This is the purpose of being a mentor. and
Yeah.
and this is the whole, I guess, growth, the development and journey of a entrepreneur, essentially, that you do have to go through the hardship. And then when you do come out in the end, they're the type of people that other people look as inspiration because they weren't able to make it through the hardships, or they're questioning themselves, will I be able to do it? But when we look at people like Priyanka Chopra, as you mentioned earlier,
Mm.
she has gone through the hardship. She has gone through and fought through. She's made herself her name in Bollywood, in Hollywood, and now she's released her own book, which I own, by the way, very proudly. But these kind of people, when you look back, I mean, she was actually bullied at school. So had she let that opinion override, she would not have been where she is now, empowering, educating, and showing people around the whole world what is possible.
Definitely. And I mean, it's weird really, because I'm going to give an example of my own now, because I remember, as I think I have mentioned very, very long time ago in a podcast I did with someone over Instagram. And I remember talking about, you know, when you make sort of these strides in life, right? So when I was first set up in business and our first premises, and I remember in 2018, me and my business partner, who's my brother incidentally, we made the decision collectively to acquire a bigger premises. And I remember acquiring it, and I remember standing in this massive warehouse, about 10,000 square foot. I'm looking around and we're thinking, how are we going to fill this one day, right? And the amount of people when they had that knowledge that we had moved out of this older business premises into a new one, the amount of people that were congratulating us and sort of almost coming out of the woodworks and kind of really showing appreciation. And I'm sitting there thinking, I've never even heard from you people in about 10 years. But all of a sudden, when someone takes that big sort of stride forward or whatever, people just come out of the blue and all of a sudden are very sort of complimentary of you. But all those years of struggle prior to that, and there isn't ever that kind of offering hand, if that makes sense. There's never that kind of hey man, how you doing, it's been a while, I hope things are good with your business or whatever. Or people just seem to disappear like completely. And I go back that to saying once again, life at the top is lonely. It is lonely, but you just get over it, I guess. And there's an element of maturity to that, because when your friend circle is, you can literally count them on one hand, you're living your best life. And that's my personal opinion. The more people that I've actually lost in my life, the more I've actually enjoyed my life. And I came out of that concept very early, like I said earlier on in this sort of beginning of this podcast. I'm sure from your perspective, I mean, I can't be sure with obviously how you see it, but would you agree to a sort of an element of that?
Yeah, I think it's part of growing up that, you have your friends around you, you have the same people around you, but growing up and actually building something of your own to share to the world, it's that whole idea of, okay, well, who's going to actually support this? People going to be there through the good times as well as the bad times, because a lot of people, they want to see the end product. They want to see who will you become, but they want to see that now at the beginning of your career. And it has a lot of hardship that gets put inside. So things like waking up early or going to sleep late, or having no sleep at all, no one sees what happens behind the scenes. And to other people it's like, well, where are the results? How come they haven't produced anything, or what are they doing now, what are they up to now? And slowly when you start to see the results and start to become that person, I think that's when you start to kind of see, okay, who's around, who's still inspired. But you do get elements, I think, of people that respect you and people that look up to you to say, wow, I knew you as a particular type of person, or I've seen you grow. And it's not to say everyone's going to sort of be there at the end for you. But then, like you said, you've got the people on the one hand that you can count, that will be there for you and that will be proud to say, wow, you've actually made it. And this is why it's so important to have a mentor in your life that can help you and pull you through those hard times, because once you hit rock bottom, it's sometimes so hard to get back up, get back in alignment and keep going.
Definitely. And just to obviously finish up, conclude obviously on that, like with you just mentioned about a mentor. I've recently enrolled to get myself a professional mentor, because I feel like I'm at a stage in my life where I want to progress my business to the next level, and that level didn't exist in my head 5 years ago. But I'm at a stage now where I've got new goals. We're constantly resetting, reigniting our goals in life. And it just goes to show that everyone needs a role model. Everybody needs a pointer in life and a direction in life, regardless of where you are in your professional career, or you're setting up your business or an established business, even the most successful people have mentors. And you know, I know what a lot of people would think behind that is, why do I need someone to tell me what to do? It's not even that. Sometimes you just need someone to confirm what you've been thinking, and that could be the pivotal point in your career. Does that make sense, Raj? So, you know, sometimes you're thinking these things already, but when you have someone who you respect and you see in that light, when they say to you, you know, I think it's a really good idea, all of a sudden that idea can go from never happening to accelerating, just because you've received that reassurance. And sometimes you have an idea, and you know, my mentor tells me this, I have an idea, and I say, this is what I want to do. He says to me, no way, you're not ready for that. And I, you know, sometimes I get offended. I think, yeah, why am I not? I'm ready for it. I'm really ready for it. But you have to put up with that. Does that make sense? So, you know, someone as a mentor is always going to be impartial. They're going to look out for your best interests, but not to the level where they're going to let you detriment yourself or be detrimental to yourself. So I think it's so important to have a mentor. And as you said, I'm sure there's people you aspire to, look up to, and seek opinion from. And you know, it's good to know that you're constantly looking to learn, because one of the things that I always mention on podcasts is you've got to constantly be learning in life, irrespective of where you are. The moment you think you've you know, learned everything, is a moment, I think, things are almost lining up to be a catastrophe in your life. So with that, having said all that, I want to thank you, Raj, for joining me today. It's been a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll work together at some point in the future again. But in the meantime, I'd like to thank you all for listening in and tuning in. And Raj Soki is a very inspiring lady, and you should all definitely hit her up and have a chat about her, about her business. In the meantime, thank you very, very much. Signing out. Goodbye.
I just wanted to say a special thank you to you both for having me on board, and special thank you to Sam for coming late. I mean, that was the cherry on the top.
You know me, Raj. You know me well.